pass at the federal level, not only to enforce existing law. My bill was a bit more diverse. You enforce existing immigration law. You also put in place the infrastructure necessary to protect our nation on the border, fences, etc. You dedicate portions of our standing military to serve on the border, to supplement the work of our Border Patrol, and we return to the original intent of our 14th Amendment. Jacob Howard was very clear in writing that amendment. And it's always good to have your handy reference here, to share it at assemblies like this. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Senator Howard, one of the sponsors of the 14th Amendment, in his floor speech in the United States Senate made very clear the key phrase here is the clause, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. He made it very clear in his statement on the Senate floor that those who were aliens, as well as those who were serving in the diplomatic corps of a foreign nation, were not subject to the jurisdiction of our law, but to their home nations. And accordingly, their children would not be recognized as citizens from birth. That was the original intent of one of the authors of the 14th Amendment. And yet a variety of court cases and those who serve impaneled as jurists, as our judges, have taken our document and turned it into they call it a living document. And now, as you and I have grown up, we've always heard if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen. That's not the original intent. But understand, read further. Section 5 of this amendment is very clear as well. The Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. In Section 5, the authors of the amendment made it clear that if things got out of whack, you could offer statutory language to further delineate what's going on and articulate the intent. And so included in the Enforcement First Act is language that we believe passes constitutional muster. In fact, I was on the phone today. My old friend, Congressman Nathan Deal of Georgia. Tonight, the primary in Georgia is going on. He's now a candidate for the governor, for the gubernatorial nomination of the Republican Party there. Nathan Deal helped us work out the language that is part of the Enforcement First Act. Real steps we can take to enforce existing law and get a handle on this vexing problem. While I was introducing the Enforcement First Act, my opponent was teaming with Ted Kennedy to introduce a bill with a poll-driven title that initially sounded so innocuous: Comprehensive Immigration Reform. Over the years, you and I have come to understand full well that that is nothing but a code phrase for a single word description that is far more accurate and ominous: amnesty. And we learned. Our friends at the Heritage Foundation, specifically Robert Rector, did the study. Long term, just to offer retirement benefits to illegals granted citizenship under the McCain amnesty plan, and I'm glad you're sitting down, to give those illegals Medicare and Social Security benefits would cost you and me and every other American taxpayer $2.6 trillion. Not only is that wrong-headed and impractical, it is unsustainable. as your next United States Senator, I will oppose amnesty in every form, and I will reintroduce the Enforcement First Act. And given the clarification and the change in personnel that will come on November 2nd, I think I will have a lot of co-sponsors, and I think we will reclaim and re-articulate our policy concerning our border. Biggest problem we have. The greatest flaw I see in Washington, and it's true of Barack Obama and Janet Napolitano and John McCain, it cuts across party lines. So many in the Washington power structure view this entire situation, view illegal immigration as a political problem to be managed, instead of seeing it for what it really is: a national security threat, an economic security threat, and an invasion that must be stopped. That is what is at stake here. Now, just a couple of additional points, and I'd welcome your questions and comments. There are just areas where John and I disagree. Amnesty is one. The bailout is the other. $700 billion to the Wall Street investment banks, and also in that key vote in the fall of 2008, another $150 billion in earmarks. Oh, but you see the commercials and you hear the radio ads that say that John McCain is an implacable foe of earmarks. Well, as John tried to expropriate that famous line from Ronald Reagan with limited success in our debates the other night, we can well quote it back to him. John, facts are stubborn things. You voted for $150 billion in earmarks, sir. Now, I can understand voters' remorse. Perhaps that's why the next day he told the press, I believe this is a direct quote, he called the vote an obscenity the day after he voted for it. And then, at the outset of this campaign, perhaps you'll recall, and I must confess I no longer subscribe to the Arizona Republic, and I hope you join me in that wise choice. But at any rate, someone showed me the front page of the Republic, and there was the headline, 3 weeks into this campaign, McCain, I was misled on TARP. Now understand, this is 2 days after NBC Nightly News featured a story on both of us in which my opponent was heard saying that his long experience in Washington better equipped him to represent you. So in Arizona parlance, this ain't John's first rodeo. But to hear I was for it before I was against it, and it was somebody else's fault, I'm sorry. That sounds more like John Kerry than the John McCain I used to work with and support. It's one of the reasons we have to make a change. A couple of other points. Remember in the last Congress, now it's true John wasn't there much of the time, a 63% absentee rate, missing 420 votes, but he did take time in the last session of Congress prior to this one to write the cap and trade bill with Joe Lieberman. And at the press conference announcing that bill, my opponent was heard to say, I don't see how you can be a conservative and oppose cap and trade. Oh, really, John? I do. Because it is a problem, it is a solution in search of a problem that turns out to be a hoax. Global warming is a hoax. That has been documented now. And all that cap and trade would do would be to take more and more of your money, both in the form of taxation and in the form of higher energy costs, and lower your standard of living. It's the wrong course of action. And then, of course, famously, when you allowed me to serve you in the Congress of the United States,